Hello and welcome to the first ever Orion Crime event in partnership with the Blackwell's bookshops. Hopefully you can see us as well as hear us on this because we've both bothered to put makeup on for you. And I'm delighted to tell you that I'm going to be interviewing today none other than SHARON Bolton, who I've worked with before, who's lovely. I say that because you have to know that considering how dark her books are and how sinister her books are. Where is it coming from? We don't know. And SHARON's 12th book, The Split, is already out now in ebook and on audiobook, SHARON?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and gets a hardback publication date of Thursday, the 28th of May. There are some pre-signed copies already with Blackwell's. So search Blackwell's on your search engine, go to the website and pre-order a signed copy through them. They're very much open for trading on their website at the moment. How are you doing in lockdown, first of all? You look really like, you look the picture of calm and tranquility. Is that true?
Oh, that's the makeup. That's the makeup. Actually, lockdown doesn't make that much difference to writers because we're used to our own company all day long and not leaving our desks and never getting dressed. Probably it's been different for me because I have had people around. My husband's working from home. My son is off school. So it's actually been noisier and busier and a bit more fun than it usually is.
Fun or hindrance?
Well, it's quite nice. Quite nice in a way to have other people around. They do expect food, though, at regular intervals. So that does tend to drag me away from the desk.
You want to do what my mum used to do and say, "What did your last slave die of?" That was the response I got when I shouted, "Mum, food!" The Split takes us to Antarctica. And I'm told reliably that you took the research for this very seriously. Did you go?
I did not go. I'd love to go. It's the most fascinating place, but it's actually very hard to get there. You can only go in their summer months, which are our winter months. Right. So there's a time sort of difficulty to get over. It's hideously expensive. And it would be our big family summer holiday for the year if we went. And I just can't persuade my husband and son to spend their 2-week summer holiday in the Antarctic. They just won't go for it. So I had to do a lot of desk research.
Tell us where it is, first of all. I had to look it up, SHARON, as well. It's kind of Falkland Islands and then up and across, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. It's a British protectorate. I feel very strongly that I'm a writer of British mysteries. All my novels are set in Britain or British territories. So I wrote a novel set in the Falkland Islands a few years ago that was quite successful. People liked the idea of this weird and wonderful place that was very British but very exotic at the same time. And while I was researching the Falkland Islands, I came across this tiny island halfway between the Falklands and Antarctic that was called South Georgia, that only has a population of fewer than 12 people in the winter, something about 30 in the summer. And it's one of the most isolated, hostile, populated places on Earth. I thought, this is such a good setting for a thriller. And so I filed it away at the back of my head, and knowing that one day I would come back to it and I would write a novel set partly there.
So did the setting come first or did the plot come first?
The setting came first, yes. Right. Yeah.
So then you've got to work out then, have you? How am I going to create some kind of mystery and tension in this? You've got a brilliant location, but you need to get to the location first, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. So my main character is a glaciologist. She's a scientist who studies glaciers, working for the British Antarctic Survey. So she has taken a job on this very remote island to study glaciers for 2 years. And she's done it willingly because she's running from someone. She's very, very afraid of her ex-husband, right? And she believes that if she goes to the very ends of the earth, then she'll be safe from him. But as the book opens, the summer season is drawing to a close. The last cruise ship of the season is coming into harbour, and she can't relax until she knows whether or not he's on board, whether he's found her at last. Yeah, well, spoiler alert, he has. So The Split starts as a classic chase thriller. She is running across this frozen wilderness that she knows very well because it's her natural environment. She's a glaciologist, and he's pursuing her. So we've got all the excitement of the chase in the opening chapters. Yeah. And then towards the end of the first part, they do meet up. They come face to face. And what happens is, without spoilers, the opposite of what I think we're expecting. And that was the plot idea that made me think, yes, I can do it. I've got a story. I can set it in this environment.
That was really well done, because I know what happened, and that's really well done. You didn't give anything away there, but very well done. And then you pause the kind of current story, and you take us back to Cambridge.
Mm. Well, I felt my readers needed a little bit of a break then, because South Georgia is a very forbidding, very hostile place. There is an online book club that's reading it at the moment, and I'm reading it chapter by chapter along with them.
Right.
And a lot of them are saying the same thing. This setting is almost too tense. I'm too stressed out by it. It's such a dangerous place. And they're right to feel that. So I did feel that once I'd reached a certain point, once I'd got Freddie and Felicity together, I had to give the reader a break and the characters a break and take us as far away from this environment as we could possibly go. So we've gone to Cambridge, which is an ancient city, very, very peopled city, and it's the height of summer. So we're suddenly in a very warm, very civilized environment where we meet Felicity a year earlier, and we find out what went wrong in her life, what happened between her and Freddie, why is she so terrified of him.
Hugely unreliable as well, isn't she?
She is, yes, because things are happening to Felicity that she cannot explain. I don't know, Phil, whether you know a film called Sleeping with the Enemy. It was released probably 20 years ago. One of the creepiest films I've ever seen. And the scenes towards the end when Julia Roberts, who plays the main character, is wandering around her house looking into cupboards, and they seem to have been subtly rearranged. Towels had been moved, and she's thinking, is he here? Has he done that? Or was it me? And she can't trust the evidence of her own senses. And I thought that's such a creepy idea. So I'm doing something similar with Felicity. Things are happening in her life that she cannot explain. Is she going mad? Or is there really somebody out there? Because I think one of the scariest things of all is when you can't trust the evidence of your own brain. When you can't trust yourself, where do you go?
Which happens to us all, doesn't it, on a daily basis? I mean, I'm forever going into rooms thinking,
yes.
But when it's as sinister as, is that trunk in the loft? Is that really in my loft? Did I put that there? What's that doing there? It starts to,
Yes, she finds roughly halfway through part 2, she finds a trunk in her loft. She has no idea what it's doing there, how it got there. And she opens it up, as of course she would. And she finds quite something in there, doesn't she? We can't possibly say what it is, but she finds something that just turns a whole world on its head.
And I mean, the natural question, Sharon, and forgive me if it's a tad intrusive, but the natural question is to ask you if you have any primary experience of this type of psychological manipulation. But I'm guessing you don't. I'm guessing you've made it up.
Yes, yeah. I think it would feel too personal, wouldn't it? I mean, we do as writers put a huge amount of ourselves into our books. And we accept that we have to do that. We have to sort of bare our souls to the world in a way, in order to make the books feel real. But I have over 12 books, and I've got a couple of more that haven't been published yet. I've dealt with so many different psychological conditions, psychiatric conditions, with people with various different paranoias. If I'd experienced them all myself, I would be a complete and utter gibbering basket case. You know, that there comes a point when you have to do the research and you have to trust in your imagination. And also, I think even people who suffer from the sort of conditions that I write about from time to time, no two will experience it in exactly the same way. So nobody can legitimately say to me, you've done that wrong, because it's not like that. All they can say is, it wasn't like that for me. It could be for somebody else.
What even the most general of reader can say is they can say whether something feels right or not to them as they're reading it. And this does feel tremendously right. So how do you know when you've got that right?
That's a very difficult question to answer, and I don't always get it right. There will be times when my first draft of a scene or an idea doesn't quite work, and that's where the team comes in, because I have a very good team around me. I've a very good experienced agent. I have a brilliant editor who also has a team around her. So the input of other people, once the story is largely mapped out, can be very useful in just just refining the book. But I also think writers learn to trust their own instincts. You know, I've written a lot of books now. I've read hundreds of books.
Yeah.
I think I kind of know when something's working and when it's not. Although I can be surprised. I've just finished a work in progress that I thought was dreadful. And people are telling me it's the best I've ever written. So,
Oh, really?
Don't always know, do we?
And why did you think it was dreadful?
Just a difficult book to write. No, it's not The Split. It's another book that
Sure.
I shouldn't really be talking about yet. But
No.
I'm just making the point that I like to think I can trust my instincts, that I know when something's working and when it isn't. But I would never like to be without that backup team of agent, editor.
Yeah, that's why I asked you what you felt was so awful that other people told you was so brilliant about this next book, because it's an interesting balance, isn't it, when you have a team around you between, as you said, trusting your instincts and trusting their judgment.
Yes.
And I'm always keen to know where that line lies. At what point do you say, no, I'm absolutely not taking that out of my book? Or do you go, actually, yeah, they're right, and they're making my book better?
Okay. It's a balancing act. I always liken editing to childbirth. Hideous to go through, but worth it in the end, because the book that results is almost always so much better than the first draft. I mean, I never submit a book to my editor until I think it's perfect, and then she will send me 20 close typed pages telling me everything that's wrong with it, and nobody wants to come near me in the first few days after I've had that editorial report, but gradually I start to see where she has a point and how I can make changes that will improve the book. That doesn't mean to say I'll take everything on board that she says, and sometimes we have quite a bit of toing and froing, but eventually it will be a slightly different book that is much, much better. That was certainly the case with The Split. That went through a few edits.
Did it really?
Oh, yes.
Are you able to,
I'm dealing with some quite difficult themes, some quite complex themes to grasp.
Yeah.
And there are a number of different points of view. I mean, usually we're either in Freddie's head, who is the predator, or Felicity's. And then there's the psychiatrist, Joe. So there are three main characters, and I'm juggling their points of view. But there are a couple of minor characters who we occasionally hear from.
Well, rather helpfully, you put their names above each chapter.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not like we've got to keep track.
But juggling various different points of view and making everything mesh together was quite a balancing act. So it's helpful to have other people saying, yeah, that's working, or it's not.
Is there one
character, Phil?
Say again.
Who was your favourite character?
In this?
Yeah, who were you rooting for?
Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Delilah. A lot of people like Delilah, his mum.
I just felt that he was my way in.
Yes, he was the normal person.
Yeah, and that I also was massively intrigued by Bamba. It is Bamba, isn't it?
Bamba, yes.
Yeah. And I was wondering, I was leading to ask you actually whether any of those characters were positioned for you to move the story on.
All of them. Yeah, all of them. Joe, as you rightly say, is sort of the reader's representative in the book.
I feel like he's solving clues for me to help me understand.
He is the one who's saying, what on earth is going on here? You know, he's asking the questions of Felicity that the reader wants to ask. You know, what's going on with you, Mrs.? Why did you do that? What are you thinking now? That's it. He's asking those questions. So he is representing the reader. So to that extent, I suppose he, more than any other character, is moving the story along and keeping the reader grounded. But I did really enjoy the relationship that he has with Delilah, his mother. I thought that was an unusual and slightly quirky sidekick for him to have, you know, his mum.
Yeah. How much do you want to say about his mum?
Oh, well, she is a senior police officer in Cambridge. She's a bit of a mess, frankly. She's a middle-aged lady. She's overweight. She drinks too much. Her peroxide blonde hair is dyed various shades of pink in the summer, and she wears clothes to match. She drinks hard. She smokes hard. She adores her son, Joe. He's her life, apart from her work. But you know, she is instantly suspicious of Felicity. because she sees the attraction between Joe and Felicity, and she knows this girl is bad news. She doesn't want her anywhere near her precious boy. So I did enjoy the interaction of those three.
Yeah, and there's a lovely moment when you start to piece together what's going on. I was desperately trying to flick back to one of the opening scenes when the boat arrives on the island to go, oh, so is that you? Oh, so is that you as well?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we meet Joe and Delilah. They do go to South Georgia, so we meet them in the opening scenes.
Yeah, there's no falling.
Travel well. She's not a good sailor, so I think we first meet Delilah when she's throwing up on her shoes.
Which is something I had written down to ask you until you revealed that you've never been. So
I will go. I'll go one day.
I mean, you can understand why your husband and child don't want to go, can't you? It's freezing there, isn't it? I mean, the funny thing is, I've did a quick internet scan of the early reviews for your book, and I've tried not to do it, Sharon, because almost every one of them describes it as chilling, and it's like, well, yeah, because yeah, I mean, I think if you only get 2 weeks off, I don't know, it depends on the type of person you are, doesn't it? I'm very much a lazy, bomb on sun lounge, you give me the heat, man.
Yeah, I would love to go, but at the same time, it's a slightly scary place because it is so very far from civilization. There is a doctor on the island, and there will be a doctor on the boat. But if something goes wrong, you are 3 or 4 days sail away from the nearest hospital. You cannot fly to South Georgia. There are no landing strips. It's too far for a helicopter. So that sense of being cut off from the world, even the thought of it, I find slightly unnerving. So I imagine, yeah, working there would take quite some courage. But on the other hand, it is so stunningly beautiful. And the photographs you see of South Georgia are amazing, and the video footage is incredible.
Yeah, okay. So is that how you got some of the earlier underwater scenes so spot on? Because the way you describe those, I was convinced you'd done the dive yourself.
God, no. I have dived, but not for some years. No, you will always find something to help you on your way. There was a BBC documentary set in the Arctic, I think, where they did actually dive a blue glacial lake. And it was the most incredible footage. I thought, yes, that's it. That's my opening scene. I'm doing that.
This, as you said at the beginning, it's a cat and mouse. It's a chase. It's got that kind of tension to it. Do you? I mean, this sounds quite calculated to ask, but do you sit there and go, okay, the last book was this, I'll make this one this, or how do you decide which element of mystery and suspense? Because the theme that runs through all your books, or the ones I've read at least, is you really are an expert at ratcheting up the tension, and there's only so many settings you can do that, aren't there?
I haven't run out yet.
No, I wasn't suggesting you had.
It amused me when you said how you decide which book you're going to write next, as though I have a whole larder full of ideas. I could just walk in and go, yes, I think I'll do that one this year. I mean, if only. And usually by August comes around, because I start work on a new book in September. Typically, I think, what do I write about this year? What am I going to? I haven't got any ideas.
Have you not got an Ian Rankin style collection of small little yellow post-its with one-liners on?
No. Has he got one of those?
Yeah, he sees mad stuff, and he just literally writes a sentence like bloke walking down the street, blah, 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 unusual gate, boom, and he'll just stick it on his desk.
I do that. I am struck by unusual things that I see or hear or that happen, and I do file them away. But it can be quite some time before they develop into anything close to a plot.
Does that make September's really stressful for you?
Yes, it can be, yeah. Yes, it can be. I think I wrote a novel a few years ago called Dead Woman Walking, which was a classic chase novel, a woman being pursued by a predatory male across hostile countryside. And it was surprisingly successful. It did better than I expected. So I know that formula works. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to play around with it a bit in the split. I wanted to start out as a classic chase and then give the reader something else. So in the second part of the novel, we find out what happened to Felicity, why she is the way she is. And we learn so much more about her. And we get to know Joe properly, because he's got quite a backstory as well. Yes. And he's bringing some baggage to the party. So we learn about Joe's backstory. And, you know, we see the two becoming close and think, can it possibly work? They're both too damaged. And then just when things seem to be sorting themselves out, we're back to South Georgia and the chase is on again.
You mentioned Sleeping with the Enemy earlier. Have you seen Insomnia, the Al Pacino film?
I haven't, no.
So, because I could just imagine this as a movie, and there's some scenes, they're a different part of the world, but there's some scenes on water there that are very eerie, and that I was kind of, they were replaying in my mind as I was reading passages of your book. Are you anywhere near a movie with this? It would be difficult to film, I think, but so picturesque.
Yes, I mean, it hasn't particularly gone out to the film and TV market yet. We usually get some interest in my books as they come out, usually, but everything's up in the air at the moment. I mean, nobody's making film or TV at the moment, are they?
Well, I spoke to Michael Connolly last week, and they were all set to go on a Lincoln Lawyer TV series at CBS. Yeah. And on the Friday before the Monday started shooting, the network pulled it.
Yeah, I met somebody from a new TV company in London just before Christmas. And that was a very exciting meeting about a number of my novels. Mm-hmm. Of course, you know, nothing's happening right now. Still, we'll get back to normal one day.
So how are you going to approach, because you and I are speaking in the middle of May, how are you going to approach September? I know you've got some time, but I just think even if you have a story sorted for September, is your mind going to be full of lockdown life? And will you put lockdown life into the story, or will you ignore it and try and pretend it didn't happen? Have you thought about that?
Latter, very definitely the latter. I think there will be so many writers writing about lockdown. And even if their novels aren't particularly about the lockdown, they will feel they have to mention the lockdown. So a novel set very obviously in 2020 can't be written without mentioning the fact that we're all stuck inside our houses. So I'm not attracted to that idea. I think the novels that I will write, even if they are set in 2020, I'll not mention the year. No, it doesn't, not for me, no.
Sharon, do you ever terrify yourself? Do you ever spend a day writing a book like The Split, and then do you ever hear a noise late at night and think, I wonder what that is? Or are you able to switch off?
I don't, not in that way, but the research does bother me, because all my novels deal with lots of very different themes and situations, and my main characters have come from all different professions. So I'd have to do a lot of fairly detailed research before I start work. And the research that I do can cover some quite dark subjects. So I do find that very depressing at times. You know, I've had to research student suicide, child abduction, child abuse, you know, everything nasty you can think of. I know a lot about it, and that can take me to some very dark places, and does definitely have an impact upon my own mental health, without question.
And how do you deal with that then, Sharon? How do you recover?
I write the book. And it's as though somebody has flicked a switch in my head, Phil. Suddenly it goes from being desperately depressing to enormous fun. Right. And the only way I can explain that without making it sound as though I'm a complete psychopath is I know it's not real when I'm in charge.
Yes.
It isn't really happening.
Yeah.
And I'm in control of events, and I can make sure it all works out well in the end. So it's actually a very cathartic process for me, producing a novel out of all the dark research, because it's how I come to terms with it and make myself feel a bit better. And I think to some extent, that's why people read crime. They're making themselves feel better about all the nasty stuff in real life.
And then how do you make sure that you don't pass some of that beleaguered feeling you get during research onto the page? How do you know where to draw?
Well, a lot of it will. I mean, Pete, I told you a book club are reading The Split at the moment, and they're a couple of them have said they're skimming the scenes that deal with the whaling and the capture and the processing of the whale, because they're finding it too distressing. So some of it will find its way onto the page. But what I do, what any author does, is give the reader a satisfactory conclusion. We deal with all these difficult issues and we bring them to a proper close. And there is a satisfaction, a cathartic release in that they don't necessarily get in real life.
No, or aren't guaranteed in real life. Yeah, with all the neat ends tied up together. Yes. Yeah. Excuse the flailing arms, by the way. We're having such a nice chat. I've run out of battery, so I just wanted to plug my laptop back in there, make sure that we could continue
All right.
the conversation without having to cut it short for people who are watching this. In terms of the crime market at the moment, there's always been, it seems to be growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And yet I'm always struck by the generosity of crime writers, and you all seem to support each other's books. There's no kind of sharp elbows, are there?
Oh, there are, yeah. We just don't let you see them.
Well, I went to Harrogate.
We spent years covering our tracks. We're going to let you see the daggers. Come on. Now we're a mean bunch, really.
At Harrogate, at the Crime Writers Festival that I went to a couple of times, all the writers seemed to be wonderfully supportive of each other. And there was a general kind of thought, I suppose, that people don't just buy one. If they're into crime, they won't just buy one crime book. So there's enough to go around, kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. And I think what you have to remember is that writers are very solitary beasts. We do our job at home alone, seeing no one. And if a writer doesn't particularly have a family, he or she might not see somebody else for weeks on end. So when we do get together, we kind of like to let our hair down. So that's what you see at Harrogate. A lot of writers who've finally been allowed out of the house.
So just take us through your year then. September you start writing. When do you look to finish writing? And I believe you're in promo now.
Yeah. Around about February, I would hope to have the first draft that can go to my agent, who will send back her comments. And then it will go to my editor. It will send back. So it will go backwards and forwards from me to somebody else in the team for quite a few months, probably through to midsummer, by which time it's been proofread. And then it goes into production, and that's the last I see of it until it comes out the following spring. But by then, I'm working on another one.
Right, okay, yeah. Because I was thinking this one's out in hardback 28th of May, but this is, you've already had almost a year then of gestation.
Oh, this is quite a confusing time for me because I'm promoting the split.
Yeah.
So I have to have my head full of the split.
Yes, yeah.
I'm doing edits on the one that will be out in 2021.
The one you didn't think would be any good?
Pardon?
The one you didn't think would be any good and is?
That one, yeah. I'm doing edits for that. And I'm also starting the first draft of the one that will be out in 2022. So I have 3 books in my head at the moment when normally I only really have space for one. So this is quite a challenging time.
How do you stay on top of it all? Do you have to do revision before each interview?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing before I zoomed into you.
And what do you do to unwind, Sharon? How do you relax? How do you get away from all this?
Well, I'm very excited because I'm an open water swimmer. And the lake has been closed for the winter, and we were very afraid that it might not open this summer, the whole coronavirus thing, but it's opening tonight. So when I finish talking to you, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive to a lake in an old quarry pit. And it's 17 degrees. It is going to be freezing, but I'm going to go for a swim. So I'm an open water swimmer. I do like reading, obviously. Most writers like reading.
Yeah.
I cook for my family. I walk the dog. That's about it, really.
So how about this then, right? A writer goes to a quarry to do some open water swimming.
Yeah.
And on the first 3 strokes of her breaststroke, she hears a massive splosh behind her. She looks behind, she can't see anything.
Oh my God.
There you go.
Thank you.
That's for next year. That's so cheeky to even deign to offer you an idea. Listen, this Orion Crime event's in partnership with Blackwell's, and I know that at some point when there's a partner on board, there's always that question that you can tell has been crowbarred in about the partner. But I want to reassure you, watching and listening, we haven't been asked to ask any questions about Blackwell's, but I do know, Sharon, that it's a bookshop that you're fond of, and there's no kind of BS around that. That's just true, isn't it?
No. There is a famous Blackwell's in Oxford where I live, and it is the most incredible bookshop. It's huge, and it has a basement area. I think it's got the biggest under basement of any bookshop anywhere in the world. It's like something out of Harry Potter. And they have events there, and it's just the best place to go for a book event or for a book launch. So I'm very excited and grateful that Blackwell's are involved with this event, because they really are some of my favourite booksellers.
So the ebook's there, it's good to go. The ebook's there, the audio book's there, it's good to go. Thursday, May 28th for the hardback.
And I've signed some copies for Blackwell's.
Great.
So if you go onto the Blackwell's website, I think you can get some signed copies.
Right. It's a pleasure. I can't believe it's been, I think we calculated 2 years since we last
Yeah,
met on stage, isn't it?
I saw you.
Yeah. Oh, it's really lovely to see you. You look really well, and I'm glad the family are well, and the book's terrific, if not utterly terrifying, but that's why we like you, isn't it?
Thank you, Phil.
We come to Sharon Bolton to get scared to death. And come back to Orion Crime soon, where there'll be some more of these, I hope, and you can enjoy these while you're in lockdown. Bye-bye.